You're watching EAC News. Thanks for joining us. Following 6 days of screenings, masterclasses, and other film-related events, the 11th edition of the Cambodia International Film Festival successfully came to an end on Sunday, 3rd July. This year's program featured 144 films from 26 countries, including 62 Cambodian films and 20 films under the Special Australian Panorama, commemorating the 70th anniversary of the establishment of diplomatic relations between Cambodia and Australia. There were also an additional 36 events, including masterclasses, cinema talks, and discussions. EAC News attended the closing ceremony to see the conclusion of this festival's triumphant return after COVID-19. The festival's closing ceremony was held at Factory Phnom Penh and was attended by prominent members of the Cambodian film industry, international guests invited for the festival, ministry officials, and the Australian ambassador to Cambodia. The director of CIFF, Cedric Eloy, and the executive director of the Bophana Center, Chia Sopiep, shared some of the main highlights from this year's festival. These included the hugely successful IMAX screening of Angkor, The Lost Empire of Cambodia, which had a full house at the biggest venue of the festival. The premiere of The Face of the Mekong with Psy, part of an Oxfam project raising awareness about the importance of the Mekong River, and the actor Psy was also awarded CIFF's very first Beautiful Planet Award for his contribution to environment education through film. Cambodian-Australian filmmaker Alison Chorn also came all the way from Adelaide to present her work in Cambodia for the first time, highlighting CIFF's importance as a platform for connecting artists in the Cambodian diaspora. They further shared that social media engagement for the festival's Facebook page had reached 500,000 people, and the audience numbers for the screenings were somewhere around 26,000 people. The massive turnout and success of the festival was something of an unexpected but very pleasant surprise for the festival organizers. The General Secretary for CIFF, So Chandara, said this was especially so since they had such a short amount of time to bring the festival together. The team had only received approval for the festival from the Ministry of Culture and Fine Arts in April, after cinemas were finally able to reopen, and had spent the past 2 months knee-deep in preparations. CIFF Director Cedric Eloy also spoke with EAC News about how difficult it had been when the 10th edition was cancelled due to the pandemic. However, 2 years later, he is very satisfied with what they were able to achieve for the 11th edition.
It was a tough time, because 2020 it was the 10th anniversary. We had a village at the Exchange Square. We had a lot of events lined up, not only cinema, but performing arts. We had a lot of performers. They were just ready to go on stage. And we had just to call them and say, well, everything is canceled, everything is down, everything, we will see what happens. And it's been very tough for everyone. So to come alive again, and I think CIFF is alive with all the people that come alive again, and I'm very, very, very satisfied about that right now. Yeah.
Bophana Center Executive Director Chia Sopiep said he is very thankful to all the volunteers, staff, partners, and sponsors for helping and contributing their efforts to bring this festival back, and is so thrilled with the results that he struggled to properly convey his happiness.
I don't know how to describe it. It's much more than the word I can say how I really appreciate the contribution of this of people around us, including Ministry of Culture and Fine Arts, our donor, our sponsor, our young people, our filmmakers, after 2 years. But the people that we also we don't have to forget is the audience that have been indoors for several months, for more than 2 years. So when we have content out on the screen, you can see that they turn out unexpectedly, especially during the opening of the CIFF on 28 June in Chattamuk Theatre. And then the following day, we see a number of people coming in to see films, staying for discussion. This is really meaningful.
Australian Ambassador Pablo Kang gave a short speech congratulating CIFF for a successful edition and underlined that all of this was only possible because Cambodia had successfully implemented its national vaccination campaign, which allowed for cinemas to reopen again. He said because this year Cambodia and Australia are celebrating 70 years of diplomatic relations, the embassy helped program the Australian Panorama, choosing 20 films that spanned the last 7 decades since relations were established and symbolizing the longevity of this relationship. Ambassador Kang also spoke with EAC News about why the embassy thought the film festival was a perfect way to commemorate this relationship.
Well, so Australia and Cambodia established diplomatic relations in 1952, and so we chose a very broad range of Australian movies that spanned all those 7 decades. So we had some Australian movies from the 1950s right up until very recently. And of course, you know, while we're talking about diplomatic relations, the foundation of any strong relationship between two countries is the people-to-people connections, and that's very much evidenced through arts and culture, and film is a very important part of that. As you know, Cambodia is an incredibly young society. Roughly 2/3 of the population is under 30. They love going to the movies. There's been such a great interest in all the movies shown at the festival, including the Australian movies here this week.
Richard Kuipers, an Australian film critic for the international trade paper Variety and who has been involved with CIFF since it first began over a decade ago, was the primary curator for the Australian panorama. Given his long relationship with Cambodia, he has an idea of what Cambodian audiences might respond to, so he was the perfect choice for a curator and worked with the Australian embassy to make the selection.
What I looked at most importantly was presenting a panorama of Australian cinema. And that means a panorama of Australian life. Trying to show an audience in Cambodia a very broad cross-section of Australian cinema and Australian life. To show comedies, dramas, horror films, a documentary, things that showed how Australian society has itself changed over the years. So that was my general approach, to give the Cambodian audience a very broad picture of Australian cinema, but one that could be accessible enough for most audiences to follow and to understand as an introduction to Australian cinema.
The Secretary of State of the Ministry of Culture and Fine Arts, Hap Tuat, was the final speaker of the night. He congratulated the CIFF team and commended their efforts in creating such a unique program showcasing the cultural bridges between Australia and Cambodia in film. He also praised CIFF for highlighting local talents and providing rich content on livelihood, art, and culture, especially of Indigenous communities living along and around the Mekong River. He further reaffirmed that the Ministry of Culture and Fine Arts considers this annual festival to be an essential element in promoting and supporting the Cambodian film industry as part of the royal government's strategy for cultural and economic development, before officially declaring the closing of the 11th CIFF. The closing screening of the Australian panorama and the festival as a whole was the 2016 film Lion, which was personally chosen by the Australian ambassador himself. An emotional and powerful story about the process of adoption, Ambassador Kang said he chose the film as he thought it would be able to resonate with many audiences.
So we thought it would be a really good way to round out the festival and the Australian content in it. It's a really good, I think, indication of the incredible cultural and ethnic diversity that makes up Australia today. In Australia, more than half of the population, about 52%, of Australians were either born overseas or had one or both parents born overseas, and certainly that comes to the fore in Lion, and it's just a really interesting story, and a story that would resonate with Cambodians, of course, which has its own experience with adoption over the years.
A modest dinner reception was held after the screening, where invited guests were able to grab a bite to eat, watch a video recapping all the main highlights from the festival, and chat with one another. One key force which in many ways acted as the backbone to the festival was its hundreds of volunteers who worked tirelessly to keep all the events running smoothly. One volunteer said he got involved in the festival to do his part to help build the Cambodian film industry.
First, I think that Cambodian film was destroyed in the 70s area, so now it is begin to rise again. And as my contribute, I can build it more bigger, more powerful again.
Another volunteer remarked on how much she enjoyed the chance to watch many films and help out with this event.
It was very enjoyable. It was wonderful. All the program that they put, all the screening, the movies, and our hospitality to our guests was very amazing as well. Yeah.
The importance of CIFF for the local film industry cannot be understated, and over the past 12 years, the festival has only grown bigger and more successful. Richard Kuipers said he can see a clear trajectory from the establishment of CIFF in 2010 and the increasing prominence of Cambodian cinema.
there is a direct relationship between the establishment of the Cambodia Film Festival and the increasing prominence of Cambodian cinema. The Cambodian Film Festival was established around about the same time as the Cambodian Film Commission. And at the same time, we find that there are some new Cambodian films appearing because there's a film commission. There's a film commission, there's a Cambodian Film Festival. And there is now somewhere for those films to be seen in their own country. At the same time, we have an incredible growth in cinemas. The multiplexes that are being built here and cinema attendance in Cambodia has just gone through the roof. So all of these things have interacted with each other and they're absolutely interlocked in regard to the development of the Cambodian film industry.
The night ended with a big closing party at the Factory Phnom Penh's FT Gallery, with performances by artists from Rundom and Clap Your Hands. Many attendees and volunteers could be seen dancing the night away. This was also finally a chance for the CIFF organizers to take a breath and relax after a hectic week of running around and supervising all screenings and activities. Festival director Cedric Eloy, however, said his team will not have much time to relax, as the next edition of CIFF will come in March of 2023, so they will need to start planning and looking for sponsors from August or September.
We really need support. I'm really calling out to companies who don't know what to do with their sponsorship money, and instead of doing, maybe things that are not relevant sometimes, I really invite them to join the festival and then to get out there, and to get really contribute to the development of Cambodia through culture, through films, through the arts, because it's fundamental, and Cambodia has tremendous talents. It's not true everywhere. We have great cinema, we have a vibrant city, we have a government that supports cinema. Ministry of Culture is very supportive of the arts, and but this platform can grow, and really the sky is the limit. So I'm very happy if there is more engagement, and we have more funding, more sponsoring. We have tons of ideas to use it right,
The Cambodia International Film Festival is organized by the Cambodia Film Commission and the Bopanas Center and hosted by the Ministry of Culture and Fine Arts. The festival acts as a catalyst for the film sector initiative, gathering more than 20,000 participants each year and as a bridge between Cambodia and the world through the universal language of film and culture. The 11th edition of the Cambodian International Film Festival has finally come to an end to great success. Over the past week of 144 films, the turnout has been phenomenal. After 2 years of the COVID-19 pandemic, people have been really eager to come back to the theaters to watch these movies together in a big crowd, and it's been a really amazing time, and we really look forward to seeing what CIFF has in store for its next edition. Darshana Gauchen, EAC News, Phnom Penh.